Bernie Sanders praises Fidel Castro's massive literacy program in 60 Minutes interview. Hello and welcome to TSD. If you are new to the channel, tap on the subscription button and press the notification bell so you can receive news and updates that you can rely on daily. Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders praised former Cuban dictator Fidel Castro's massive literacy program during a CBS 60 Minutes clip that aired on Sunday. CNN anchor Anderson Cooper introduced the topic by playing a clip of a 1985 interview with government access Vermont TV in which Sanders said the Castro regime educated their kids, gave them health care, and totally transformed the society. Take a watch.
Positive things to say about the former Soviet Union and the Sandinistas in Nicaragua.
And everybody was totally convinced.
Here he is explaining why the Cuban people didn't rise up and help the U.S. overthrow Cuban leader Fidel Castro.
He educated the kids, gave them health care, totally transformed the society.
We're very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba. But it's unfair to simply say everything is bad. When Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing? Even though Fidel Castro did it?
There's a lot of dissidents imprisoned in Cuba.
That's right, and we condemn that. Unlike Donald Trump, let's be clear, I do not think that Kim Jong-un is a good friend. I don't trade love letters with a murdering dictator. Vladimir Putin, not a great friend of mine.
Last February, the Reagan Battalion Twitter account posted a video of Sanders reminiscing about watching the Nixon-Kennedy debates in 1960 and almost leaving to puke when both candidates criticized the Cuban dictator. Take a watch.
But I remember, for some reason or other, being very excited when Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba. I was a kid and I remember reading that. And it seemed right and appropriate that poor people were rising up against rather ugly rich people. And I remember, again, very distinctly, a very distinct feeling. I was watching the debates. You remember the famous Nixon-Kennedy debates. That was the first time the presidential candidates actually debated. And I was becoming increasingly interested in politics. Didn't know much, but was interested. I remember sitting in the student lounge at our dormitory watching the debate. And at that time, we can talk about Cuba now, I was very excited and impressed by the Cuban Revolution. And there was Kennedy and Nixon talking about which particular method they should use about destroying the revolution. And I remember the irony, as we learned the history later on, Kennedy was saying that Nixon was too soft on communism. We pick up a point that Rick was making. In Cuba, we should deal firmly with Fidel Castro. And Nixon was playing the role of, hey, you got to be patient. You can't do these things. You got to negotiate. Well, of course, what he was upset about is that secretly they were planning the Bay of Pigs invasion right then. So he was the liberal, and Kennedy was playing the conservative. And actually, when you read novels, people say there's a sick feeling in your stomach. Usually, I'm sufficiently unemotional not to be sick, but I actually got up from the room and almost left to puke. Because for the first time in my adult life, what I was seeing is the Democrats and the Republicans, both of them, and of course, as Rick points out, Kennedy was the flashing young liberal. And what we were seeing right before my eyes, way back then, and I didn't know anything about politics, but clearly that there really wasn't a whole lot of difference between them. And you read the New York Times and you understand why they are not talking about what's going on in Nicaragua. Okay, that's the important story. The important story is not Nicaragua. It's not the United States government attitude toward Nicaragua, which is no different than it's been in 50 years. The United States has the right to destroy any government in Latin America that they want, and that's been consistent for 50 or 100 years. There's nothing new about that. What is new is why, when you read the New York Times, the real truth is not being told and how that's obfuscated. So if you want to read what goes on, and I was doing that. I remember reading and beginning to read about the Cuban Revolution, and what I was more impressed about is how it was being reported in the United States press, and I began to understand that you don't always hear all of the truth.
In a 1989 statement as mayor of Burlington, Vermont, Sanders praised the Cuban Revolution as a very profound and very deep revolution, the Washington Examiner reported. For better or for worse, the Cuban Revolution is a very profound and very deep revolution, he wrote. Much deeper than I had understood. More interesting than they're providing the people with free health care, free education, free housing is that they are in fact creating a very different value system than the one we are familiar with. The Vermont senator, who easily won the Nevada Democratic caucuses on Saturday, took his wife to the former Soviet Union in 1988. Although the trip occurred right after their marriage, Sanders claimed it was to establish a sister city program with Yaroslavl while he was serving as mayor of Burlington, Vermont. The fact is that I went to establish a sister city program with Yaroslavl, then in the Soviet Union, now an important city in Russia, which is still in existence today. Sanders told MSNBC Live in 2015. The purpose of that trip was a sister city. Did it take place after my marriage? It did. However, The Guardian reported that the trip doubled as a honeymoon with his new wife, Jane. There are some things that the Soviet Union does better than we do and which were, in fact, quite impressive, Sanders said after a trip to the Soviet Union, according to the Washington Examiner. Subway systems in Moscow costs 50 kopecks, or 7 cents. Faster, cleaner, more attractive, and more efficient than any in the US, and cheap. The train trip that we took from Leningrad to Moscow for Soviet citizens was very cheap. And guess what? Bernie loves bread lines. Take a watch.
You know, it's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death. That's a good thing.
People on camera are saying they're ripping through garbage bags outside restaurants and shopping malls. And they're starving. People here are eating dog food. Basically, the middle class has been demolished in Venezuela. 90% tax rate on entrepreneurs.
La cola, the line.
That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
This is everyday reality for the poorest in Venezuela. The country's economic crisis has turned into a humanitarian one, leaving people more and more desperate. Jose Godoy is an unemployed construction worker. He says his hungry children cry to him, asking for food, and he has no choice but to hunt through the trash with many others.
The cheering and the taunting belies their desperation until you see what they're facing down the road. These Venezuelan families are ready to do combat, and it's primal, a fight for food. What about us, screams Yolanda Rodon. What about our children? What about our grandchildren? Nothing?
That's a good thing.
So it's good that there are lines waiting to get food.
I mean, I think in the piece that I wrote, I sort of left this alone, because what do you even say in response to that? It is the height of absurdity to say that the idea that there are bread lines because food is rationed and one gets a ration book, and when you get your rations, you don't even get very much, that is a positive thing. I don't think that you could sell that to the American people.
For the milk, yeah.
In 1985, in which you praised Fidel Castro, you said he educated their kids, gave them health care, totally transformed their society. Do you think the Cuban Revolution was good for the people of Cuba?
What I said, the main point that I made, Anderson, is that I don't think the United States of America should go around overthrowing governments. I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president.
Share your thoughts and reactions in the comments down below. And haven't you checked out the official TST store yet? It has a variety of Patriot-themed custom t-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, phone cases, and lots more. Make sure to take a look and maybe help us out picking some products for yourself and your loved ones at great prices. It does make a huge difference to what we're doing here. Link in the description below. If you've liked this report, let us know by tapping the like button down below. Share the news among friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more news and updates on TST. This is David Ravine, and I'll see you in the next one.